Democrats want to impeach Trump for obstructing justice in a crime that he never committed. And Republicans want to investigate Democrats for accusing the president of being a Russian agent. Today, we discuss the Mueller Report. To begin this episode, I want to talk about how likely impossible it is to discuss the Mueller Report and its findings without being accused of political bias. Whatever facts I choose to include, as well as that I choose to exclude from my essay today, could be used as fodder to point to a bias that I'm bringing to this discussion. I do not doubt my own abilities to be objective and the way that I choose to approach the reading of this report. I guess this is just the world we live in today. At 448 pages in length and over 2,000 citations, the Mueller Report is the kind of crucial government document that very few people will ever read. For this reason, I will begin with a 30,000-foot overview summary. The Mueller Report is an investigation of two parts. In the first part, it looks into Russian interference in the 2016 election and the possibility of the Trump campaign colluding or conspiring in that interference. And the second part specifically looks at President Trump and the potential that he obstructed justice in that investigation. While the media talked at length about Trump-Russia collusion in election interference, it's important to note that collusion is not a legal concept of any kind. Specifically, the Mueller Report investigated criminal conspiracy, which does appear in the U.S. Code. It also looked at coordination between the Trump campaign and Russian agents as per the appointment order made by the acting Attorney General. The report documents numerous links between Trump campaign operatives and the Russian government in efforts to influence the 2016 election. The efforts included social media accounts on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram in order to sow discord among different parts of the U.S. coming into the last election. These efforts included the hacking of computers and email accounts of top Democratic officials and organizations, as well as the releasing of sensitive information to influence the election outcome. The most notable of these efforts was the releasing of emails from John Podesta and the demonstrated favoritism of Hillary Clinton at the expense of Bernie Sanders within the Democratic National Committee. Despite 2 years of media attention to the story of Trump-Russia collusion, the first part of the Mueller Report concluded that there was no criminal act of conspiracy committed by the Trump campaign in coordination with Russian agents to interfere with the election. The report specifically says, although the investigation established that the Russian government perceived it would benefit from a Trump presidency and worked to secure that outcome, and that the campaign expected it would benefit electorally from information stolen and released through Russian efforts, the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. It is truly remarkable that after more than 2 years of Democrats and the mainstream media accusing the president of collusion or acting as a Russian agent, or even committing treason in the U.S., a crime, by the way, which is punishable by death. The Mueller Report fully exonerates the president and his campaigns of accusations of conspiring in election interference with the Russians. However, it is important to note that several individuals associated with the campaign lied to the special counsel investigation early on, likely to protect the president in what they perceived as a politically inspired witch hunt, including Michael Flynn, George Papadopoulos, Michael Cohen, and Paul Manafort. These individuals were indicted in violations of the federal false statement statute and pled guilty and are facing prison sentences. In the second part of the report, the Mueller investigation specifically examined whether or not the president obstructed justice and tried to unduly influence the investigation. The second volume is more unusual than the first, as it openly acknowledges that the FBI cannot indict a sitting president without violating the constitutional separation of powers or usurping the president's executive privilege. Instead, the Mueller Report notes that an investigation without an official determination of guilt is not a violation of these constitutional principles. This report, therefore, seeks to create a public record of all the facts uncovered related to the president's attempts to influence the FBI investigation and to Russian interference. Specific actions of the president include requesting the loyalty of the FBI Director James Comey before then firing him, urging the Attorney General Jeff Sessions to unrecuse himself from the FBI investigation, and pressuring the White House legal counsel Don McGahn to remove Robert Mueller as the special counsel. Pressure, by the way, that McGahn never acted upon. This report extensively documents 10 such instances of potential obstruction of justice. Since these actions by the president also clearly fall under his constitutionally defined executive powers, obstruction then comes down to the determination of if the president acted with corrupt intent. Notably, the report states, if we had confidence after a thorough investigation of the facts that the president clearly did not commit obstruction of justice, we would so state. Based on the facts and the applicable legal standards, however, we are unable to reach that judgment. The evidence we obtained about the president's actions and intent present difficult issues that prevent us from conclusively determining that no criminal conduct occurred. Accordingly, while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him. Instead, the report outlines a legal framework for potentially holding the president accountable for these actions. The report clearly indicates that given the constitutional separation of powers and executive privilege under Article 2, only Congress has the capacity to ultimately make a determination about the president's actions and take legal action against a sitting president. That is, to impeach the president if the review of the evidence leads to the conclusion that Trump acted with corrupt intent. So, given this summary of the basic findings of both volumes of the Mueller Report, I would like to present 3 points of analysis or observation for you to consider. In the earliest stages of Russian interference going back to 2015, the Internet Research Agency, the main organization that conducted the misinformation social media campaign on behalf of the Russian government, actively supported both Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, specifically to hurt Hillary Clinton. Russian efforts to specifically support Donald Trump ramped up in 2016 as the primary election process was nearing its conclusion. This targeting of Hillary Clinton likely goes all the way back to the 2011 Russian election that sparked mass protests in the street of Moscow over allegations of a rigged election. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton publicly denounced the election results and embarrassed Vladimir Putin. To Putin, this was a U.S. regime change effort specifically targeting him. It is quite possible that Russian election interference was first and foremost an act of retribution against Hillary Clinton. Second, while numerous attempts were made by Russian operatives to conspire with the Trump campaign throughout 2015 and 2016, the campaign never paid for any opposition research or coordinated with these efforts in any way, and therefore they never committed any act of conspiracy. Moreover, it may be worthwhile to remember that the Trump campaign itself was defined by chaos, improvisation, and rapid staff turnover. The report clearly documents many instances of outreach by Russian operatives that were never responded to or even acknowledged by Trump campaign officials, especially at the top levels. Many of these were attempts to specifically set up a one-on-one meeting between Trump and Vladimir Putin. The notion that the campaign could have done anything as nefarious as conspired in a coordinated fashion to beat Hillary Clinton does not seem to reflect the on-the-ground reality back then. 3. Some legal experts argue that constitutional law does not allow charging the president in obstruction of justice in exercising Article 2 executive powers. Moreover, there is an issue establishing motive to obstruct justice, since the FBI Director James Comey had told President Trump privately that he was not personally being investigated in relation to Russian interference. However, Comey was unwilling to say this publicly at the time, and therefore Trump fired him and even explained his firing of Comey in an NBC interview. Arguably, Trump could have lacked faith in Comey's ability to properly execute the investigation, and more importantly, Trump did not ultimately take formal actions that he threatened, which he had the legal authority to take, to fire special counsel Bob Mueller, although he openly contemplated doing so and did so with the White House General Counsel Don McGahn. It seems difficult to establish motives that would underpin an obstruction of justice charge. It seems even more difficult to distinguish between corrupt intent and Donald Trump's natural, impetuous, speak from the gut nature. So, what do you think of the Mueller report findings? Does it make the president look better or worse? Is it time for Congress to let all of this go, or should Congress move forward with impeaching the president? I would appreciate if you commented below and shared your thoughts. I welcome a discussion of all sides of the political spectrum. I would also appreciate if you choose to like this video, and if you want to know about future videos and follow my work, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell on the upper right side. For Mind Over Media, this is Stephen Bulletin, signing off. It's super windy.